Good afternoon, everyone. If you can hear my voice, I am about to feed the penguins in our June Keys penguin habitat. It is the second of 3 meals of the day for these birds. This is kind of like a snack feed for them, so everybody might not eat, but it's still pretty fun to watch. So if you give me just a second, I will enter the habitat and start the feed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We do log every fish that these birds eat. So while I start the feed, I'm not going to be able to talk to you guys because it's a little hard to multitask and feed these hungry birds. But if you take a look at this bird over here, her name is Dee. Dee is going through her first catastrophic molt. This is a totally normal thing that these guys go through. In fact, all penguins go through it. But her two buddies, Cleo and Wally, are very, very close to molt. So if you look at their flippers, they're very, very swollen. These guys have to replace their feathers once a year because that feather structure itself is what's keeping them dry in the water. They have about 70 to 75 feathers per square inch, and Dee is going to look like this for about 2 more weeks, and then she'll look like the adult. So this is actually her first molt, and she's taking it pretty hard. She doesn't really understand what's going on and that it's natural, so she's been hanging out with us a little bit more than she usually does. So I'm going to go ahead and start feeding our penguins. When I'm done feeding, I will talk a little bit about what's going on, but they are getting 2 types of fish. Restaurant quality herring and capelin. Herring is the larger of the 2 fish, and it tends to be a favorite for most of our birds. So you can see these guys are pretty hungry. A lot of them are getting ready for that molt, so they're bulking up. If you see this bird stretching his neck really far out in between the other birds with his feet in the water, that is Robbie. Robbie prefers for him to get, I call it room service. So we'll see if he wants to eat a little bit differently than everybody else. But when you work with these guys like I do, which is 5 days a week, it's really awesome, but you get to know them very well, and they take advantage of that. All right, thank you for your patience. These guys are a little bit hungrier than I expected. So out of the 3 times they get fed, this feed is usually a snack feed, but what they're telling me right now is that they are ready to start bulking up for molt. So Dee, who I was talking about a little bit ago, she's sleeping over there right now, she's going through her first molt. Penguins, all penguin species, go through a molt once a year. So their feather structure itself is what keeps them dry in the water. They have about 70 to 75 feathers per square inch. But as the year goes on, their feathers become worn. So penguins have naturally learned to adapt by replacing them all at once, which can be a pretty stressful time for them. In their natural habitat, they stay on land for about 5 weeks and they fast. So before that, ahead of time, they are out fishing for food, small schooling fish, and pretty much eating almost 40% of their body weight, where they usually eat about 5. So it is a very big increase in diet. And then they basically come on land, they don't eat, they don't really move, and they're really cranky. And that's just something that they naturally go through. So we do put signage up because some of our birds look a little funky when they go through this molt and they don't feel so great. I always feel bad for the juveniles because it's their first molt they've ever had. So imagine getting really hungry, really full, and just uncomfortable. But in about 2 weeks, she's going to have a brand new set of feathers, and she's going to look just like the adults do. So for the first year of their life, Magellanic penguins look different. They have subadult or juvenile plumage. And I've watched 7 generations go through this process, and it never really gets any easier for me to watch them because you just feel so bad when they're replacing all their feathers. If you are a Magellanic penguin, you can migrate about 1,000 to 3,000 miles a year. So that's one of the reasons why they replace those feathers. And it's always after a breeding season. because after the breeding season, they molt and then they go into migration mode for about 4 months. So if you come here in the fall and you happen to see me feeding the birds, they get a lot more spooked by little things that don't bother them right now. Like if I sneeze, if it was migration time, they might actually get a little bit afraid of that, and they eventually come back for their food again. But it's a natural process they go through. They just don't spend as much time on land. So this time of year is one of the only times you see these guys on land. They're called Magellanic penguins. They're members of the banded penguin family, along with the African Humboldt and Galapagos penguin. And I am currently feeding our oldest bird. Her name is Whatever. She only eats capelin, and she has to have certain capelin. I'm not quite even sure what her standards are. Sometimes she eats them, sometimes she spits them right back out at me. But she has had 10 capelin today, so she is definitely not starving. If you want to know a way to get up close and personal with our penguins, we do actually offer penguin encounters 3 times out of the week, every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And you get an opportunity to meet one of these birds up close and personal. They all do have different personalities, and they all like to eat a little bit different. Ludwig here, I kind of have to, that was interesting, kind of have to push the fish in his mouth a little bit sometimes. And we log every fish that they eat so it's nice and accurate. Let's say somebody goes a day without eating. We wouldn't know if we just threw the food in. So by doing the feeding this way, we're able to get a nice, accurate account of how these guys are doing. They do get yearly physicals where they go to our vet hospital right down the stairs. But that's after their molt, so that'll be in the fall. 13 chicks have hatched here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. They do mate for life. That's one of the more common questions that I get. But if their mate passes away, they will find a new mate. But these guys are very devoted to each other. And the younger birds kind of hang out with one another. And the older birds are kind of already paired off and they do their own thing. So thank you guys so much for hanging out at the aquarium. We are a nonprofit institution, so your paid admission is going right back to these animals. Whether it's to make sure they get food or free vet care or they get to eat with their feet in the water. Only the best for the animals here at the aquarium. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day here.